Ever since I heard that the great Shakespearean actor Patrick Stewart is recording a sonnet every day, I've been avoiding Shakespeare myself, but we can only do that so long. So I'm going to do Shakespeare's Sonnet 65 today, just to think a little bit about the difference between the Shakespearean sonnet and the kind that we've been looking at so far, quite a number of them. From Wordsworth, from Hopkins. They're all more or less in the Petrarchan form, as it's called, the Italian sonnet, that has 8 lines that make a kind of unit, followed by 6 lines that are the second part of the poem and that more or less answer a difficulty or problem that's been set up in the first part. For example, in God's Grandeur, Hopkins uses the first 8 lines to talk about how God's grandeur is obscured by the work of man, how things have become beaten down and soiled by our constant presence. And then in the 6 lines of the second part, he answers that by saying, and yet for all that, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things, and so on. Wordsworth does it in his sonnet, The World is Too Much With Us, setting up a similar situation in the first 8 lines and then turning toward a kind of personified pagan imagination in the last 6 lines. Shakespeare's sonnets are different in that they have 3 quatrains and then a couplet, so that the rhyme scheme and the logic of the sonnet work toward some kind of solution that comes in the last 2 lines of the poem. The great critic Paul Fussell, in a book called Poetic Meter and Poetic Form, says it's like blowing up a balloon and then right at the end you take a pin and pop the balloon. And that's the answer to the argument. How well that works, or how characteristic that really is of the Shakespearean sonnet, we'd have to see by looking at many of them. This one is called, well, it's just Sonnet 65. And let me read through it and then make a few comments. Since brass, nor stone, nor earth, nor boundless sea, but sad mortality o'ersways their power, how with this rage shall beauty hold a plea, whose action is no stronger than a flower? Oh, how shall summer's honey breath hold out against the wrackful siege of battering days, when rocks impregnable are not so stout, nor gates of steel so strong, but time decays. Oh, fearful meditation, where, alack, shall time's best jewel from time's chest lie hid? Or what strong hand can hold his swift foot back? Or who his spoil of beauty can forbid? Oh, none, unless this miracle have might, that in black ink my love may still shine bright. Several things to say here. Notice the strong emphases in that first line. Since brass, comma, nor stone, comma, nor earth, comma, nor boundless sea. The stops, that sense of a kind of beat to the way that the line works, as though you were feeling sad mortality gradually working away at the substances that he mentions, brass, nor stone, nor earth, nor boundless sea. If sad mortality o'ersways their power, then how does beauty hold a plea? Notice a legal term, hold a plea. How is beauty going to have any chance against sad mortality when its action, again, a legal term, is no stronger than a flower? The action that beauty brings is a flower, something more vulnerable and evanescent than almost anything, and certainly nothing next to brass or stone or earth. How can summer's honey breath hold out? And notice the metaphor, against the wrackful siege of battering days. Here's summer, but then day after day beats like that first line, dun, 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 dun. Day after day, beating against the walls of this honey breath, so to speak. I mean, how does something so lovely and limited by time hold out when not even gates of steel or rocks impregnable are strong enough to resist time? Then we get to the third quatrain, and this is where I would just sort of ask whether Shakespeare is actually giving us a third thought here or making a kind of turn as the Petrarchan sonnet does. O fearful meditation, where alack shall time's best jewel from time's chest lie hid? I get the sense here that Shakespeare is answering the first 8 lines of the poem with the last 6, and then giving a kind of twist in the last 2 lines. But just think about this question: where shall time's best jewel from time's chest lie hid? The sense here to me is that you've stolen something from time. You've taken the jewel, the treasured thing from time's chest, that is where time had stored this treasure up. Where are you going to hide it if you take it from time? What strong hand can hold his swift foot back? What can you do to resist the pursuit that time is going to mount once time has found out that you've stolen his best jewel? Who his spoil of beauty can forbid? There's a kind of vengeance that's suggested there. Also, just to take the whole metaphor of siege and rage that builds up, it's the rape of beauty, his spoil of beauty, as though soldiers had been kept from a city for all these months, and they break in and their excess is boundless. How do you save beauty? So that's the question posed by the whole poem, and answered in the last 2 lines. Oh, none, unless this miracle have might, that in black ink my love may still shine bright. An extraordinary claim being made for poetry, which has none of the beauty or the honey breath in the nature of black ink and its writtenness of the things that he's named so far in the poem. But yet somehow by the miracle of language, by some kind of transformation, it still holds the action of the flower and the honey breath of the threatened beloved in its power.